Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond Founder podcast. I am here with another very interesting guest. Typically, we talk about one business. We're going to be talking about a little bit more than one business. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Alan Madison, owner of Newcastle Construction, and you do a lot of remodeling work there, but you're an author, you're involved in AI, you're involved in faith-driven entrepreneurship, building a network of faith-driven business owners. You've got music and spoken word content going on. There are so many things in your ecosystem, and you're going to be able to explain that way better than I can. So can you share with our audience a little bit about what you do, that ecosystem, how it all connects, and just your story, how you got to where you're at now?
Yeah, so that's a big one.
That's a big one.
And sometimes when I start talking about it, sometimes I see people's eyes going all over the place because I'm doing a lot of things right now, but I feel like that I'm being led to hone it in. It really is about teaching people. I think education is going to be a part of that, teaching people how to build businesses and do it kingdom-minded. Mm. So that's really what it's all. I believe that God is really bringing all that together. And started one is I'm a construction owner, so I learned building and how to build processes. So first I started with my hands, and then I learned how to build that process, how to have that customer relationship, how to build things with quality and efficiency. When I started to learn those things, then I realized I like building. Mm. So it's not really just like what I'm doing; it's that I like the building process. And I think that's really one of my biggest talents that God is really kind of like honing in and showing me is that building is where my heart is. Mm. And I want to teach people how to do that. So construction is what pays the bills for me. The other stuff that I'm doing right now is really, I'm just kind of relying on my heart. I'm just pouring out my heart, and so I am working on some things with AI because I feel like that things are really going that way. So technology. So I'm trying to build an arm of technology and start to lean and run my businesses going into that way. One, using that to support the businesses that are already making me money, and then I'll eventually helping that arm to help build other people up too. Because I see AI, and I don't want to go too far into that because that's a really big door. But just to kind of put it in a small shell, I see AI is making us better, and I feel like that AI could be done better too. I think that if the people were more involved versus us building it and actually letting that data that we've been creating, just like you said, I'm building all this stuff in the ecosystem. If we take more responsibility and ownership of that data, and we can actually create more value for ourselves versus giving it all away. So that's kind of like just a little tiny introduction to that, because it really is just teaching people how to and creating a system that will eventually be able to help us to collect that data so we can create value for ourselves.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And so the AI is connected to all of your business ventures, not just the construction company.
Correct.
Did it start out that way, though, and branch out, or did you always know I'm going to plug this into everything right from the jump?
No, really at first I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, all of a sudden this idea came to me. I knew that there was something I was supposed to do with AI. I wasn't sure. When I get an idea or something like that, the first thing I did is start praying about, like, what do you want me to see in this? What am I supposed to be doing with AI, Lord? And so I actually prayed about it, and what I heard was data collection. And so I started building this white paper. Okay. Literally the next thing you know, a couple months in, I've created this entire white paper of this entire ecosystem of how to collect data, because I feel like data is going to be the new currency of the world eventually. Data is going to be one of the most valuable things on the planet. And I feel that, and I see it happening. And so, but there's really no one that is taking advantage of that other than the large companies that are just absorbing it all.
Right. There's some freaky stuff when you start talking about how big companies collect data. I was doing some research. Data's huge for my industry as well. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's huge for every industry.
Yes.
But I was doing some research on how those large companies collect data. I believe it's either Lowe's or Home Depot. Could be both, probably. They can scan a license plate that drives through their parking lot. Doesn't even have to shop there. Might just be passing through. And from that singular license plate scan, they can collect almost all of the information that they want about the individual that's driving, or at least owns that vehicle. And so they know how to market to that person just because they drove through their parking lot. That's a little bit scary. But like you said, if we can leverage that power for good things rather than just run away from it out of fear, I think there aren't enough people that are asking that question of how can we do that. There aren't enough people that are trying to find a solution for how we can properly manage and use that data to benefit people, to keep it safe. You mentioned ownership of that data, putting that ownership back in the hands of the consumers.
That's right.
People don't even know what data of their own is out there sometimes to be protected. So I think all of these things are super, super important, right? And we haven't even gotten into, your ministry, the books, everything else. So just for the audience, so we can keep everything organized in our mind, right? Can you give me a timeline of which came first, second, third, et cetera, and how many years ago that was?
Okay, definitely. Obviously, the construction is. So with construction, I started out, I graduated college, and by the time I was 19, I was running crews of 30 and 40-year-old men building. I had a knack for building. I loved it. Yeah, so basically all my families are builders of some sort and different types of trades, and so I just found a love for it. And I love doing it. I still love doing it. I wish my body would allow me to do more of it, but it's starting to get to a place where it's a little bit harder than it was. But I started out doing that. I loved it. I built a business when I was 20. I think it was 24, 25. I built my first business, a multi-million-dollar business, doing commercial exterior work. I was running at some point I'd run 60 guys in one time.
Wow.
And that happened really quick. And again, these are all things that also, even that business was started by just listening and hearing God and moving when God said move. He said build a business. I was already working for a company, making good money. I had a side business that I was making almost $3,000 a week just doing that. And then God said, hey, I want you to build a business. Okay, Lord, well, I'm doing really good right now. But I listened to that, and I did, and I literally quit my job, went out. First week, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do now? And literally the first week I went out, I went to a big building. It was a $20 million building. Walked up to the construction site. Hey, who's working on the exterior of this? And they said, well, I'm getting out of this, but I'm going to introduce you to my partner tomorrow. Come over here at the same time, and I'll introduce you to my partner. Well, I had very little money to start, and I went in there, and the guy said, hey, I want to make you my partner. Here's a $10,000 check. Go get your workman's comp. Like, you can't make this stuff up, And so, so next thing you know, within months, I'm literally running 20 guys. I got 20 guys working for me. But because I had a good upbringing, one, I knew how to build. I knew how to take one step at a time, but also how to grow, And so I just learned that at an early age. I've always been able to see processes, and so learning that, and that's the key. That's one of the things that I want to teach young entrepreneurs is how to locate that process. It's already written inside of whatever it is you're doing. It's just really locating it and seeing, oh, that's the process. Most people are doing it and don't even know what the process is, and they're good at it, and maybe they don't know how to take it to that next level, but I think if people can come in and say, hey, look, this is the imprint. This is what you're doing. If you just add this and this, that would make the process a little better, but then you can expand on that. And then you learn how to expand. So if you teach people early how to find their process, then when it's time to grow, they won't be crushed,
That makes so much sense. I had a mentor years ago tell me that one of the biggest blockers he's seen business owners run into is the idea that not everything is teachable. Everything is teachable.
Yep.
And there's so many people, especially in the trades, when it comes to things like quoting, what will bottleneck them is the owner thinking, well, I'm the only person on the team that knows how to quote. Well, it's because you haven't broken down the system and taught it to someone else, right? And so I love that you mentioned that. I've never thought of it as digging up the system almost, finding what's already there that's working and building upon that. That's great. That's great. I love that. So, okay, timeline. We've got the construction company. Yep. So you were working construction.
Yep.
Then you start your own construction business. God blesses that. Yep. That takes off. Yep. And then what's next from there?
That was when the crash came, 2005.
Okay.
So when that came, everything just fell apart, So slowly but surely, but overnight almost, it took me back down to zero again. And so, and those are those moments, though, that teach you something, Like I literally lost everything in that time period. And, and it could have crushed me to the point where I never recovered. But what I did is I picked up what I had left, and I started all over again. And so then I went to another company, and I helped that company build a multi-million-dollar company. So I worked for that company for a while, and for over 10 years I worked for there. And then I decided, it's been about almost 4 years ago now, I decided, well, it's either time for me to go and build something for myself or stay doing what I'm doing. And I felt like I wasn't done yet. And so that's when I began to start building Newcastle and decided, I wanted to build homes. I built many homes, framing work and stuff, but I never built all the way through. And so I really wanted to do that. And so I started that process, and actually left the company. I gave them a year notice and, tried to leave there in the best terms possible and build something new for myself. And so I started that process and learning, figured out how I wanted to put that together. And now, I've, started out to build one home my first year, 1 year, home my second year. Now, this year I'm going to be building probably 3 homes this year.
So working construction, having your own business, working construction again, having your own business again. And then where does everything else come in along the line? The book, the spoken words, the ministry, where are all those things?
So the book started about in 2012. Okay. And I just had several encounters with God that were life-changing. So I grew up in the church, and I knew, what it was to live the life, and I struggled with it, and I always felt like I always fell short, so I would just give up and say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me, I just can't do it. And but one day I was riding in my car, literally, I'm listening to the radio, and I just had this encounter where, and literally my entire car filled up with the presence of God, and I literally heard him say, "You are forgiven." And when I heard him say that for the first time in my life, we hear that all the time. We read it in the Bible. When I heard it and I knew it was his voice, I received it for the first time. So for the first time in my life, I received forgiveness. And when I did, and I realized that it was true, that I really truly was forgiven, it just broke me down. Literally in the middle of the car, I start, pouring out this emotion that I'm on the way to work, and I'm literally stopped by the nearest big block store to get a Bible because I didn't even have one in my house because I just had to have one near me. And it just changed my life and the way I saw myself. Finally, I could literally see myself as forgiven so that I can move on. And that moment changed me because now I didn't have to live up to some standard. Like, I knew he loved me just where I was, that I could start right where I was. He not only did he forgive me for what I did, but for what I was doing and what I was wanting to do. And I received it, and it changed me. So all this time I'd been trying to fix myself, and I just all of a sudden fell in love with the one who said I was forgiven. And then my life just started changing. Like, everything started changing. And so that just kind of is the beginning of how my life began to change. That was the counter that started it.
And that was, where was that in the construction process?
So that was right before I started the first business.
Okay.
Right before I started the first business, because that was when he got a hold of me and just changed and he just rearranged my life. Before that, I was working for other people and doing just really getting by. I was struggling. I was playing music with a band. I was playing band at night. I was on an independent label, and I was doing construction at night. And then, but God kind of pulled me out of the music. I felt like it was something that God was not doing, and it wasn't. All of a sudden, something I was so in love with, I lost taste for it, and so I just quit the band altogether and just. In the middle of finishing the album and everything, it just even the words I was saying, I didn't feel like had a taste for it anymore. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but then God started working this thing out in me in my life, and I started getting a closer and closer relationship. He kept showing me new things, and I had these encounters. I kept having these encounters with God, and I wasn't asking for it. It was just happening to me. I just surrendered to the fact that I couldn't live this life any longer, doing it the way I was, and God just started pouring into me. And I think because I'm hard-headed, and I have to see things like it wasn't just enough for God to be in a book. Like, he had to come out of it. He had to come out of the book, and I had to encounter him for me to really be changed. And so, and he, I don't know why, but he loved me enough to honor that. Yeah. He said, if that's what you need, this is what you're going to get. Now, it didn't last forever, but that's what the book's about. But it also showed me, and what he was teaching me, and what I wrote the book about was that's what it's for all of us. He was taking me through this process and showing me that this is what he wants to do with his people. That he wants that for you. He wants it for everybody that will listen to his voice. He wants this for his children. And so it's not, so the book wasn't for me to say, hey, look at me, look at what I've experienced, but it's more to say, hey, look at what's available to you. And that's really in a nutshell what it is.
And it's called The Keys to the Kingdom, right? It's available on Amazon. I think it's under $4.
Yeah.
So anybody could go buy that book. Did the writing process begin with that experience, or did that come later on thinking back about the experience?
No, he told me it was good. I was going to write a book. And I was like, okay. So and I just started writing.
Okay.
Because I heard him say I was going to write about it. So I started writing it.
Never really written before.
Never written before.
Wow.
And so I actually started writing a book. I thought it was going to be about my life and everything I've done. I started writing this book, and then he's like, hold up, eat. Okay, stop. I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? He's like, this is not what I told you to write. He said, I want you to write this book about my life through you, not your life. So literally, but what was awesome is God used that too, because literally I'm writing all the stuff that I'm going through, and God's healing me in the process of it. So I literally wrote 2 books, one that was never get published.
Yeah, that one was for you.
That one's for me.
That one was for you.
Yeah, and so, but it did. It was a lot of healing, and then even releasing the book. Like I'm a very private person with my so a lot of this stuff like I didn't tell anybody. I didn't tell, a lot of people didn't know what I was even experiencing with God. Only just maybe a couple people that I was in my inner circle that I would a little bit here and there tell them about what I was experiencing, but it was really just happening in between me and God. And so I struggled releasing this book, like all the way to the end. I mean, literally to the point where when I actually wrote the book and had it on Amazon, and had all the words in there, all I had to do was push the button to release it. It was like 3 weeks gone by.
Wow.
And I still hadn't released it. And I was like having this, I'm like, Lord, is this you? You sure? This is what, to literally, I'm literally laying in bed one night, and I'm literally thinking about it. And then I go to sleep, and I literally get shaken in my bed. And I thought it was my wife. It almost tickled. It was like she was shaking me really hard. It was like on my arm. And I thought it was funny. I was like, what are you doing? So I opened my eyes to see what she was doing, and she was asleep. And I'm like, God, that was you. However, dream, whatever you want to call it, but it happened.
Right.
I got shaken in my sleep. And then when I woke up, I knew that I was supposed to. And I literally got out of bed in the middle of the night, which I do a lot anyways. But I got out of bed, and I went and I released the book. And that was this.
When does the Kingdom Collective come along?
The Kingdom Collective. So again, it's one of those things I get waking up in the middle of the night, and then all of a sudden I start writing these things down, these ideas and these thoughts, and it just kept coming out, and then the next thing you know, I'm cultivating this idea of how to put into words what I'm feeling, and that's just kind of what came out of it, and it really is. There's a lot of parts and pieces to it, but I can tell you this, so part of the founder process that I created. Was what I'm actually doing right now in my Newcastle. Is I brought on a partner, and I'm helping him build a division for Newcastle. It's called the Sunroom Division. I basically put up a partner structure where it's a profit sharing business, and so I'm using that setup of how I'm setting that up with him is kind of how I set up the founder part of the process for the Kingdom Collective.
Is this a few years after the book?
Mm-hmm. No, maybe a year.
A year or so after the book is published.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's about a year after the book is published. Can you break down like a simple explanation for the audience of what exactly the Kingdom Collective is meant to do? So
what I really created what the process, or whatever you want to call it, the idea for the Kingdom Collective, how it started was I was already operating my business Kingdom, and I was doing all these things, and I was having all these benefits, all this favor coming towards me, all these things that were happening, and I wanted to know, how is it that I could teach other people to experience this, to understand that you can run a business and you don't have to go by what the world says you have to do. The corporations, they have a system that's been in place for 100 years, and the system works. I mean, it creates corporations and it crushes everything around it. And so what I wanted to do is say, hey, there's another way to do it. And the problem is, if we follow the world system, you're eventually going to find yourself in a place where you're going to compromise your faith, because you're going to say that you're going to follow the system. And so what people have done for so long is they've said, okay, well, I'm going to run a business, and the business is going to be over here, but I'm going to keep my faith on the other side, and so you're running the two parallel. but you don't feel like you can combine them because you think one's going to get in front of the other. And in reality, it does. But there is a way to run a business and not have to compromise. And so that's kind of where the Kingdom Collective comes in. It's really to educate people and show them, but it's really on a bigger scale. Is what I want to do is bring a wide group of people into a covenant with God. Okay, because I believe that covenants change everything, just like the Mayflower. You know how they came in here and they put a covenant with the land. The same way I'm saying let's make a covenant with God with business. I want to bring in people, one, that, we call them founders. We bring in founders that would literally, and it's funny that you have a podcast called The Founder.
Right.
But we want to bring those people that say maybe they got a talent or a skill that they are very good at, but maybe they don't know the business part of it. Yeah. Or they don't know how to incorporate God into that. So what we do is we're gonna have a board member eventually. This is in the beginning stages. We're just building right now. But once it's complete, we want to be able to. So you would bring that business idea to us. A group of people will decide. We'll pray about it. We'll find out. Hey, is this a business that we think? One, it's not just about kingdom, but it's also about business. So we want to make sure they're successful. So we're going to say, okay, we're going to pray, and we're going to say this business idea is a great idea. And we're going to help build that. So we bring them in under our wing, and then there's a process. Yeah. So we help them. They're actually a part of our business, so we actually are partnered with them. So we own a portion of that business, and that's the for-profit portion of it. Yeah. Okay. So, but what we do is we build that up, and we can actually release them. So we can get to a place they can work through it. We mentor them. We bring them through the process. We teach them how to be, run that business as a steward, how to, and we disciple them through that process. And then at the end of the day, if they want to take that business and go and separate from the Kingdom Collective, they can. But they could. But the purpose is to build businesses that always want to be connected. Even if they run off and take their business, they're going to want to be connected by some way, whether it's mentorship, whether it's volunteering, whether it's support. Because we're going to need support. We can't do this alone. It's all this stuff that we've been talking about today, the AI, the Kingdom Collective. It's going to take people who are going to want to be a part of it. Right.
So this is like it's like a faith-driven business accelerator. Yes. It's like Y Combinator, but the Y stands for Yeshua.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love what you said about, leading a faith-driven life in business, and how so many people think that they can't be in alignment, that you can't grow in both ways together. I've been part of a Messianic Jewish congregation for the last 3 years. And every year in Jewish communities, they read through what's called the Torah cycle. Every Jewish community around the whole world is reading the same portion of the Torah every week, even down to the day. It's broken down into 7 aliyahs. Everyone's studying the same aliyah every day, whole community around the world. So it's been really cool to see that process, and then see that through the light of Christian thought. Right. Because being a Messianic synagogue, they accept Jesus as the Messiah and things. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is 2 weeks ago, the parashah, the Torah portion that we were in, was studying the priestly garments, which include the breastplate that has the stones for the 12 tribes. And you notice a common thread with all of those stones is that when you shine light through those stones, they just reflect this beautiful, like kaleidoscopic imagery, on the other side, except for one, which is the diamond. When you shine light into a diamond, from an angle at least, it actually just becomes darkness inside of the diamond. The diamond is associated in rabbinic tradition with the tribe of Zebulon in English. And so somebody asked during the study that we have after our service, why would God associate a stone that absorbs light and turns into darkness with Zebulon when all of the others are shining? And there's a slight scientific correction there that makes so much difference to the understanding. It's only if you shine a light into a diamond at an angle that it becomes dark. If you shine light into a diamond properly, straight through in alignment, then the light will shine. Zebulon is the tribe of commerce. They're the tribe that's associated with mercantilism, with going out into the world and forming a business venture and interacting with it. And so how easy is it to fall out of alignment, and all of the light that's supposed to be shining through you becomes darkness because we're not honing that skill set to shine as light to the world. And so when you said that, it just immediately made me think of that in all of those little details. God is there teaching us those lessons. And so it sounds like you've got a business accelerator program going on that's doing essentially that. You're taking all these spiritual principles and the business principles, and people are able to get the best of both worlds. Legitimate,
right.
This is how you grow your business, and legitimate, this is how you do it without compromising on your spiritual values. That's an amazing thing. Construction, book, Christian network, business accelerator, AI.
Okay.
Where does that fit in?
The Skirion AI network is what I call it. So what it's going to be, it's actually going to be the technical arm for the collective.
Okay, we got to pause here, right? Skirion, where's that name come from?
It actually comes from the Spartans. They had what was like their Marines, their special forces that went in, and they would go in and they would find out. They would do the reconnaissance. They would go in and find the information, the data. So that's what they were doing. So they would go ahead of the army and they would check and make sure, and then they would come back to the Spartans and they would tell them, "Hey, look, this is what." And it was called They were called the Skirion or something like that. It was something similar to that, but the ion was just like for ion. So I just kind of put the two together to make that name.
Okay.
But that's where the first part, the Skiri.
Okay.
I think there were Skirions or something like that.
Yeah, that makes so much more sense when you go to the website and you see the Spartan helmet there. Okay,
Yeah.
So those dots are connecting. Okay, so this is the technical arm for all of these ventures coming together.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted to start as, and it's also going to be. It's also the first business that is going to be connected. So I put 30% of that business is going to be going into feeding the Kingdom Collective.
Okay.
So it's kind of like I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
I want that business to be a part of an example, but it'll always be tied to that business, to the Kingdom Collective. So what I want to do is I want to create a network. And the Skirion AI network is going to be a part of that. In the beginning, is going to be to help, whether it's the marketing or pushing or the technology. I want to build software. There's all these different types of software that has to be built, because I also see that we're going to be eventually blockchains going to the internet. So I want to be a part of that. Building that software, bringing and so there's still a lot of room for growth. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I want to have, but if you don't have a place for people to go to actually build these things, so that's what I want to do. It's going to take investment. It's going to take money, but I think that's the start of it. Okay, so now the actual AI itself. So what I envision is a marketplace where AI. And it's your personal AI and my personal AI, and then corporations, whatever, whoever, everybody could have a part of it. But you have your own AI that actually goes into a marketplace and it purchases and sells data, autonomously. So that's really the goal. So while you're sleeping, your AI can be selling and purchasing data that's valuable to the world. Okay. So instead, what I'm saying is, instead of you just giving all your data to everybody and everything that's taken, just like you said, just earlier, you said you're going into, Home Depot, they're taking your information right there off. So instead of giving it away for free, I'm saying, why not let's collect it, taking, the same things they want to do to collect your data, but let's collect it for ourselves. And there's ways to collect it cheaper than what the world's telling you. We don't have to have these huge data fields that we're doing. The reason they do, because they're taking all of our data.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is you can store for about $300 or $400. You can store your life's data at your house. The technology's there. So what I'm not creating a technology that doesn't exist. I created a utility of bringing technologies together that work together that already exist. So I didn't invent anything.
Right.
I just said, hey, these things work good together. So again, it's a process. What God's given me to see these processes, and that's what's happened. All this stuff's there, man.
Functionally, for the average everyday consumer, would they use that by, let's say they access, if it's an application, they go into their account, they can see all of the data that's available, from their persona, their identity online, and they can choose how to use that. So I'm okay with selling this data. It tells them the value of it, and the AI just goes into the marketplace and says, hey, James is willing to sell this amount of data for $7. Yep. And so he can sell that $7 pack of consumer data to whoever will buy it on the marketplace.
Correct.
Okay, you want to know something so crazy about this? I had this exact idea almost a year ago and didn't do anything with it. So we'll have to talk more after the show. because I definitely think that that's a phenomenal idea that has a lot of verticals it spans out into. But before we start doing a deal on the podcast here, okay, so that's very interesting. So we have a timeline now. We see the whole ecosystem. We see how it's all working together. Two things, because we haven't even gotten into the most of the questions I usually ask during the podcast, which I love. It's getting very interesting. AI and the common Christian perception in the West do not tend to mesh well right now. What caused you to embrace AI as opposed to see it as this potentially humanity-threatening, antichrist, wicked force that is just going to consume all of humanity and lead to our demise?
Well, this morning, I made some toast, right? I had my butter knife and I spread the butter on my toast, and it was fine, but I could also take my butter knife and stab you in the eye with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it really is. So, and I just want to make it that simple to start, but the reality of it is that, okay, if you are a Christian and you do believe in what the word says, that there is a dark time coming, and I believe that, and this stuff could be used to poke your eye out. But if we don't come together and say, hey, there's also some usefulness in this, and that we could actually, if we just choose to go a different way and like put the butter on our bread, then yeah, we're going to get our eye poked out. But if nobody's willing to stand up and say, hey, there is another option, then of course that's just where we're going to go. Because yes, it could be used for evil. It definitely could be, and it will be, and it's already being done. So what I'm saying is if enough people come together, and it won't work. What I'm saying and what I'm proposing won't work unless a lot of people decide to do it.
Right.
If nobody does it, then it's just like anything, nothing will be done.
Yeah. Well, and it's a big chicken and egg game.
Right.
Because people won't want to do it if there's no businesses to buy, and businesses won't want to buy if there's no consumers that are selling their data. So I definitely see where the investment portion comes in, because you have to heavily market that, probably take a loss for a few years until people become more aware of it. Also, I can see the title and headline of this video being "Butter Your Toast with AI." I think that's going to be the title. Butter your toast with AI. Okay. So this is all interesting. I have a few favorite questions I typically ask on the show, though. Number one is, which moment in your entrepreneurial journey was like that breakthrough moment for you where you realized, I can really make this happen? I can work for myself. I can build a business. I can do this. What was that moment for you?
The first business?
Sure. The first time it became a reality that you were like, I can really be an entrepreneur.
When I realized what I was doing with my hands was valuable, that was really the first time I understood. Once I realized that what I did with my hands and how I was doing it and how I was interacting with the customer that was paying for the service, that was really where I decided, I can do this on myself. And when I realized the process of it, and I said, hey, this process is simple. I have to start from the ground up, but I can do this by myself, just in me in the truck, and I was willing to take that opportunity and try, and that's how when I knew how simple the process was, just like we said, going back to the basics in the beginning and seeing that basic process and said, hey, this is really simple. I know that as long as I communicate well, I give a product that is a good product, and I do it efficiently, then I'll be able to do something. One, I'll be able to give that process or that product, which for me, it was building something on their home. I knew that if I communicated well through the process, I could sell it. If I communicated while I'm building it, and I did it good, and I made it very efficient, that at the end, not only was I going to be able to build a product, but they would actually tell somebody else, and then my business would grow.
Right.
So, and all of that still goes back to the same thing is what my heart tells me is to do what I'm supposed to do. Not ever try to take more than what it's worth. Give the people what they deserve, and treat them with kindness throughout the process, and do it as fast as I can, not wasting their time or mine. Then I knew that I could build something that would actually be profitable. That make sense?
So usually when people answer that question, it has to do with, well, it was when I got this job. It was when I secured this deal. It was when this person or this business paid me this amount of money to do this thing. Right. And it sounds like your belief came before any of that happened. you were still working in construction and you had a belief of, I can do this, a level of certainty that when I ask that question, you go back to that moment. Yeah. You're like, I knew before it ever happened, I was certain that I could do it. And I think even for people who answer the question and say, oh, I really knew that I could, do this when this person paid me. I think everyone to go out and try entrepreneurship, that's true for everyone to a degree, that you have to believe before it happens in some way. And so practically, because I'm sure our audience comes from a bunch of different faith backgrounds, whether they're a believer or non-believer or whatever they believe in, practically, what do you think helps people build that level of confidence in themselves to be able to go out and at least try?
Repetition, really. I think
love that.
Yeah, the more you do something, the more you get good at it.
Yeah,
it's like right now, my daughter, she's got a voice inside of her. You know what I mean? And she's got a talent for singing. And so, but it, I'm teaching her in little parts of me, and she's starting to see her voice. But it's like I told her, it's not perfection overnight. It takes time. It takes effort. And so if you can see that, so she can see she can sing, but I can sing. I can see that one day she'll be able to excel at singing. But so it's also not only teaching her that, hey, you do have a voice, and letting her hear it and recording it. And because I have set up a studio, and I started letting her record her voice, and she heard it for the first time. She's like, oh wow, I can sing. I know, I've been telling you that. And so I think that seeing that and that getting that confidence to say, hey, I did something, and it actually turned out okay. Yeah. Then I think that's really a starting point, good starting point.
Yeah. I love that you said repetition, because I think what sells the best in the entrepreneurial space is mindset. And I think obviously mindset's important. We were just talking about the confidence and the belief to be able to go out and do something. But I think, and the same business mentor I mentioned earlier said this to me, that it's not about believing enough that you do it. It's about doing it enough that you believe it.
That's right.
When you do the reps, you don't have to worry about the psychology of what's hindering you. And I always use the example because this is the one that's closest to me. When you're starting a business, you've got to be out there selling. You've got to put your product or your service in front of people, or nobody's going to know. Even if it's referrals, you've got to be out there getting jobs. You've got to get the first job to do the good work for somebody to make a referral. So at some point, a majority of people, you got to do the sales work. You can be confronted with the lack of desire to do that, the fear to do that. And one response is, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. And another response is, why do I have this fear? I wonder why I have this fear. Let me look up why I have this fear, how to overcome this fear. And then I watch 5 psychology videos about it. And then in those 5 psychology videos, they mention 4 different books. So now you're going to go read those 4 different books or listen to those 4 different audiobooks. And then you're going to analyze and apply all of that to your life and come back with this 8-page report in your brain of, I understand now why I was so afraid and what was blocking me from doing sales. And the other guy that said, I'm just going to do it anyway, he's like, that's cool, man. I made $80K last month. And the crazy thing is, the why behind whatever's blocking you disappears when you do it and you see the success.
That's right.
So it ends up not really even mattering anyway. You don't need to understand and psychoanalyze all of the little details of, what's blocking me and this trauma or my childhood trauma or this relationship or whatever it is. Just do the thing.
That's right.
Get the result, and all the other stuff will fade off into the background.
I agree 100%.
So I love that you said repetition. You mentioned in 2005, the crash happened and you had to bounce back from that. And you did so by working with another company again. What were you feeling and thinking in that time period? Because I know for me, and I probably shouldn't say this, but there have been times in my life where I've said, man, I'd rather off myself than go work another job again. And I know most entrepreneurs feel that way, especially once you get a taste of running a successful business. You said you had started a multi-million-dollar company. They had grown to that point. And then the crash to happen, something we don't really have control over, and to be forced back into a position where, did you have a family at the time? Yeah. So you've got to find a way to provide, right? Yep. And so you're forced into a position where, at least temporarily, you had to do something that you may have hated or not wanted to do. What was that experience like? How did you bounce back from that?
So I'm not going to say it was easy, but I will tell you that I had something maybe that some other people didn't have. is that one, I knew that God had told me to start that business. So I knew that because of that, and I saw the fruit of that in the very beginning, he was made it very evident he had started that business. Went away, I said, okay, God, then you're doing something else. And so, yeah, but it devastated me at first. You know, I'm not going to lie. It's, I even was thinking maybe construction's not the thing for me. So I even thought about getting out of construction. So it was one of the toughest times of my life, probably ever. But what happened is, and so I actually went into security work, which is like this amount of money, like compared to what I was making here, a multi-million-dollar business to this, but it was like I was completely deflated, you know. But God was doing something with it. I actually had to do security work at a college, so I went to a college and I was actually doing that. So I was walking around a college all day long, and I had this time with God that I can never get back, man. I mean, I was spending all these hours with headphones on, listening to things that were building my spirit up, teaching me. And I did this for 2 years, man. It was a tough time in my life. It was financially, man, that was the worst I've ever. I mean, there was days that I didn't even eat lunch. I watched everybody else eat lunch because I didn't have the money for it. But God was doing something that time, man. He literally there's something that happened in that moment, in those moments, those 2 years that created the drive that actually, you know, when he released me, boy, I was like, whew.
Dog on a leash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was out of there.
Yeah. Those experiences definitely make us appreciate the other side of the fence a lot more. I know that's something I've had to experience once or twice along the way. I've been on this entrepreneurial journey for somewhere between 9 and 10 years now. And I grew up doing trades work. From the time I was like 6, my dad was out on jobs. I was working out there with him. But crazy environment growing up, drug, alcohol abuse, wanted to get away from that, joined the military, had plans to go to school, and plans change. You know, deployment comes up, can't go to school, deployment gets canceled, come back, can't start in the middle of a semester. What am I going to do? You see a YouTube video of some 16-year-old making all this money, and you're like, I can do that. I can do that. Well, I couldn't do that. It wasn't as easy as they made it seem, but I caught that entrepreneurial bug, you know, and so it was just, like you said, repetition, figuring out what worked, what the skill set was, where God was leading me. And there have been times during that journey where the way I say it to people is you have high highs and you have low lows. You know, there's times where it's like, I'm just going to take care of everybody. Don't worry about it. I'm just going to, you know, send out blessings to everyone. And then there's other times where, like you said, you're like, I'm not eating lunch today or tomorrow or probably every day for the next 2 weeks. So no, I understand that. And I think everyone who wants to jump into entrepreneurship needs to understand that it's not all glory and that you can learn from people like you that have been through that process. And I think it's so important to establish those systems in your business that create stability so you don't have to go through all the ups and downs. Right. Because one thing I don't want to do for other people that I did for myself is glorify the struggle. You don't have to struggle and suffer to be successful. You have to do what is required. And if what is required causes you to struggle and suffer, then sure, you might have to. But it's not about the suffering and the struggling itself. It's about doing what is required. And I think that's why so many people say, follow your passion. And the root of the word passion, the Greek word passio, means to suffer. So following your passion means do what you're willing to suffer for. Good. And then it won't even feel like you're suffering sometimes. That's right. You know, somebody else would look at you and you're like, you know, Bill Gates, man, how does he work 100-hour weeks and stay awake 3 days in a row coding and doing all this? Because he loves it. It's not suffering. The suffering is, I got to sleep. My brain's shutting down. I have to sleep. And when you love something that much, it makes it easier to do. What would you say about everything, this whole ecosystem you're building? What do you think that passion is for you that is the fire and the drive behind all of this?
I've spent so much of my life like just absorbing God and being a part of his, you know, being in his presence and getting, you know, I want to show other people, I want to do something for other people. Put it in a nutshell is like I asked God, just probably been about 4 years ago. I said, you know, I was kind of being to myself, you know, and I wasn't really being a part of people's lives. I was kind of shut down. I was working a lot, and people like us, we get consumed sometimes with our work, and I was suffering from it, and I said, God, I need something more. He said, and I know it's people. I know it's the body that I need to go be a part of. And I said, but you're going to have to put your love in me, Lord, because I don't possess it. I'm just being honest and truthful. I didn't have this fire for people, this love that, I felt like I required. And then I literally heard his voice, and he said, if you want to know me more, and I love him, and my desire and fire was for him. He said, if you want to know me more, you're going to know them, because there's a part of me in them that you haven't met yet. Mm. So there's a part of God in each one of us that if we don't get to know each other, that hidden gem, like you were talking about the breastplate, we don't get to see those gems, that gem that is Sean. I don't get to see that if I don't have this interaction that we're having right now.
Right.
So I get to see, and I see it. I see God coming out of you, and so now all of a sudden this fire, it literally just started manifesting because I believe his word, and I believe what he was saying, and then I started loving people beyond in ways I never thought was even, because we don't possess love, really. He is love. So we have to possess him fully to be able to love each other that way. And so when I did that he changed my mind, and I started seeing people differently. And so now the drive for me is literally, I vision myself one day working fully with the Kingdom Collective, running businesses, building businesses for people, teaching people how to build businesses, teaching them how to get to know God in a different way, in a greater way, a deeper way, but also bringing in businesses that are already existing and saying, hey, let's come under covenant with God. Let's see what the power of God can do if we just say that we dedicate what we're doing to him and we become stewards instead of business owners. Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
Let's see if the power of God is strong enough to do something different and teach us to live a different way and run our businesses. And
right.
and that's the fire that I'm under right now. And that's the desire of my heart,
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the emphasis on love, because most believers know there's so many different words for love in the scriptures between the Hebrew and the Greek. There's one passage where Christ tells his disciples to go and love others, as it's mentioned several places. And the Greek word there is not agape, like most people think it is. Agape is a selfless love. It's a form of that, but it's agapeo, which is beyond the concept of selfless love. Agapeo is a verb. It's an action word. So he's not telling them, I want you to think about and feel selfless love for other people and philosophize about it and know in your mind and your heart that you selflessly love them. I want you to actually go do things to show them that you actually love them. And what does Scripture say love is? 1 John 5:2-3. For this is how we know we love the children of God, that we love God and keep his commandments. In fact, this is how we know we love God, that we keep his commandments. And everybody loves the verse, Romans 8:28. For I know all things work together for good. That's not the end of the verse. To those who love God and are called according to his purpose. 2 requirements. If you're alive and breathing, you've got a calling, you've got a purpose. Check.
That's right.
What's the other one? To those who love God. What is love? Walking in obedience to what he's commanded us. And so I think, like you said, the book had to come alive. The words had to come off the page. You had to experience it. I think once that switch flips for us, that's our job for other people. We're supposed to be that experience for others. We're supposed to make those pages come to life for other people. And I think that, are you familiar with the Faith-Driven Entrepreneur brand? So it's a large network of investors and business owners that have a similar mission to what you're doing. So they do something similar to the Kingdom Collective in supporting faith-based business owners. And they have a lot of statistics and data on their website explaining how they are, I believe it's 6 times higher to suffer through divorce, affair, suicide, all kinds of situations created by stress that can be driven by running a business. Yeah. They give on average 7 times more to their communities and to their churches than any other giver. And they're the most neglected audience in the church today. I think it's 0.03% of Christian business owners are actually served by a group in their church community, even virtually, that specifically caters to Christian business owners. And so that's the mission of faith-driven entrepreneurs, is to at least give them a community. But that's really all it is. It's prayer groups and group chats, but it's not really deploying systems into the business and creating these kinds of relationships, this business accelerator style relationship. So I would love to get you connected with them and see what can happen there. But I really do think that that's something that's lacking today. I think there's a huge gap in the market that you're able to fill with the Kingdom Collective, and I appreciate you for doing the work to make those words come off the page for other people. So if anybody watching this wants to be a part of anything you're doing, I believe the Kingdom Collective is probably the most important. Where can they find you at? Where can they join?
Yeah, at info at thekingdomcollectivelife.com.
Okay, great. And they should just email you, about their business, what they're doing. What stage would you prefer people to be in? Is it everything from, hey, I just have this idea, to early startup, to established businesses?
Well, like I said, right now we're at ground level right now. We're just putting the structure together right now. So we're not even able to take donations or anything yet, but we're working everything. So I'm putting the website together daily, putting the parts, the pieces together, because really that's the structure and the bones of that when we get that started. Then it'll be really just, I'm going to have access. They'll be able to submit their information on the website and in different areas and where they feel like they're being called for. And then as we need, because really the first part is to start actually getting out there and start, doing some, free classes, maybe doing them at some churches on Saturdays, showing people what's available and what's possible. And so it's really at the ground level. So I'd just say if you feel led, I mean, we need help. I mean, this is ground level. This is zero.
Great.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So to end, we typically do a rapid fire round that has 4 questions, but I missed some of my favorites. So the rapid fire round is supposed to be, I just ask you the 4 questions. It's a 1-sentence answer, but I want to throw in 2 additional questions if you can condense it to 1 or 2 sentences, because they typically tend to be heavier, but I think you'd have a lot of value to add through these. Okay. So I'll start whenever you're ready. Okay, so question number 1, biggest mistake you've made in business so far?
One mistake is I tried to start a business one time that I really didn't. What we talked about earlier is having the experience. I tried to start a senior care business, and I was going to use someone else to run it, skills, and then it just really flopped. So I put a bunch of money into a business that just flopped because I didn't have the experience to do anything with it.
Okay, so, gotcha. Biggest myth or misconception you hear about being an entrepreneur online today?
That's easy. That you get to be your own boss.
You have more bosses than anyone.
Yes.
Yeah. Here's the true rapid fire questions. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
I'm definitely a night owl.
Night owl? Okay. What time you usually end up going to bed?
Oh, sometimes 12:30, 1 o'clock.
12:31. Yeah. Favorite tool or piece of equipment related to your job that you enjoy using?
You broke it because you said favorite tool was my laptop, I guess, because I gave my tool belt up. Laptop's probably going to be the best one.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah. What's your go-to pump-up song in the morning?
I don't really have one.
No?
Nah.
You're a music guy.
Yeah.
You just sing to yourself?
No, I listen, right now in my life, I'm listening to more like just background soaking music.
Okay.
So, I don't know if I guess that pumps me up, but it grounds me. So I get grounded. That's my biggest thing in the mornings. I get grounded and I listen to something that just kind of is level.
Let's say you needed a pump-up song.
Oh.
You're riding into war.
Yeah. It's funny. It was because I came from music. I used to listen to it. But for some reason here lately, I just do not listen to it.
Don't listen to music. I understand that. My best friend, he was really the person I moved down here for. He owned a studio called Arcadia on Seaboard Street. And I moved down here to work with him and help him grow that company. He was the same way because he was the lead engineer there. Never really listened to music outside the studio because he was just around it all day. I'm making our rapid fire questions not rapid. Sorry.
It's okay.
What's one thing that you do every day to stay on top of your game?
It's definitely going to be pray.
Pray.
Yeah, it grounds me. It gets me because without that, it's so easy to get consumed.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a lot right now, and I, sometimes I ask, God, can I bear all of this? Because it's a lot, and a lot in your head. So I have to be grounded, and because sometimes I get carried away.
Yeah. And I want to make a comment about that too, because that's so important. we have a very Western Greek understanding of prayer, because in the Greek, the word for prayer means to beg, essentially. But in the original Hebrew, the word tefillah for prayer means to execute judgment. And so the question is, with what standard, right? Obviously the word. So even when we read the word, it's not just a metaphysical conversation in our thoughts. When we're reading the word and we're executing judgment on our lives in comparison with the word and saying, is what I'm doing matching up to this? That itself is a form of prayer. Mm-hmm. And so I would encourage other people, I have a friend that's a pastor, and he'll pray about decisions. Sometimes he's like, man, I feel like I have spiritual schizophrenia because I don't know mm-hmm. what's my voice and what's God's voice and where he's leading me, where it's my own desires. If we ground everything on the word mm-hmm. and just choose, Jonah went in the total opposite direction of where God clearly told him to went, and he still ended up where he was supposed to be. So if we're at least trying to make it where God wants us to be, we'll be okay. Yeah, it might end up on the podcast.
I say the thing I'm saying that I hear myself saying a lot lately is he doesn't waste a thing.
Yeah.
He doesn't waste. And, in prayer and worship, a lot of times we don't realize that it's just really living out our lives. So when I'm praying, it's literally just me walking, getting ready for work, doing the things I'm doing, and he's doing it right alongside me.
Yeah.
And just being aware of his presence. Sometimes that's all it is. You ever notice, like, sometimes if you have a good friend, a really, really good friend you've known for a long time, that if you're in a bad place, all you have to do is just come in and hang out with you, just sit, and you don't even have to talk.
Yeah.
And you feel better when they leave.
Yeah.
That's how I pray a lot more, nowadays. It's not a lot of words sometimes. It's just being with him.
Right. You have anybody that you want to thank on the podcast?
Yeah, I'd say my uncle, he's passed. If I could say something to him, I would say, in his latter years, he ended up being, struggled with a lot of things, drugs and things, and ended up taking him to his grave. But I'll tell you this, we miss, if we, like I said earlier, if we don't pay attention and we look at people with God's eyes and see what's inside of them, we miss the God part of them. And my uncle, even though with all his struggles and all his things, he made me smile. He made me laugh. Mm. And then he loved me. And he also taught me how to do things with my hands and taught me how to do things and do it to the best of my ability. And that's something that part of him, the God in him, that taught me. If it wouldn't have been for him, I think, just example, when I graduated high school, I went to college. I started college. I was going to robotic electronics, and that didn't last. I withdrew, and then I started going to work for him. Well, he picked me up in the morning. It was dark, and he brought me home at night. It was dark.
Yeah.
So he taught me all these things that actually could go into any business. By doing the best you can. And that's actually where the Newcastle came from. He said, we'd be going to work and he'd say, remember, guys, this is their castle. We're working on their castle, and you're going in and out of their castle. So you got to treat it like it's their castle.
Wow. That's amazing.
And that's where it came from.
That's
Newcastle. Treat their home like it's their castle.
That's amazing. Yeah. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you want to share that we didn't cover? This will be edited out. Is there anything we didn't cover you want to talk about before we end?
I didn't know we were going to cover this much. I didn't know.
I know. We're doing all right on time. Yeah. But okay, Alan.
Yeah.
What is your final message to the world, to our audience?
Follow your heart. If there's something that you feel like you're being called to, or something you need, that you feel like that God is preparing you to do, then don't be afraid to step out and try. And if we spend time with him and we get to know his voice, then we'll know that we're not going to be walking out blind. But one of the things he's shown me is if I just listen and spend time with him, he always gives me direction, and so that I don't have to walk blindly. Now, does it mean that while that process, I'm going through that process, that it's going to be easy or you're always going to have all the answers? No, it's not. But that's also brings us back to him again to try to figure out where we are through the process. It's every moment by moment, just walking it out with God and trying to realize and remember we are just stewards with this life, with our family, with our businesses, whatever it is, we're just stewards. And that everything we've been giving these things, and we don't have a mentality of we're entitled to these things. It's a gift. Yeah. And if you treat it like a gift, then you're going to honor God through that.
So don't be a spoiled brat.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So construction, books, AI, data, we talked about all of it. We talked about so much. This has been a wonderful time. Thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing all of your experience, your wisdom, sharing with the audience what you're doing. We talked about how people can contact you. Where can they find you on social media if they want to keep up with all these amazing things?
I just Facebook. I don't know how. You just look up my name. Is that how you do it?
Okay.
I'm not a big. It's funny. It's like I'm not a big social media person. But
You're out there doing the thing.
Yeah.
You're not always posting about it. Yeah.
So I do more of the stuff, and then I try to do my best to do the social media. So maybe I could get some help with that one day. But yeah.
But other than that, is it Kenneth or Alan Madison on Facebook?
Kenneth Madison. That's
Kenneth
right.
Madison on Facebook.
Yeah.
Great, and people can keep up with you there.
Yeah. Yes,
Wonderful. Well, Kenneth, Alan, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. The audience appreciates it. This has been another episode of the Beyond Founder podcast. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.